Hey guys, I'm Oren. We're back with the game of money. I'm just back from Europe visiting the factory that we run there, and our partner is amazing. We stopped over in Paris and we were at the Louvre, and the difference between America and Paris and Europe is no more felt, I think, than in Paris. Like the differences are huge. So the way you get into the Louvre, as most Americans find out, is either wait in a super long line, right, to either get in even if you have a ticket. But if you buy a tour, the tour guides all know, like they take you in for 20 minutes and then you just, you want to walk around. So the tours all get you in, show you one thing, and then they leave you alone. It's not like a tour that lasts a long time. So anyway, our group assembles. There's like 22 of us. We go in, but there's one family with a grandma, a grandpa on a cane, and they have a kid in a stroller. And the tour guide's like, it's not really made for you guys, but if you want to come, I'll get you. So the Louvre is packed. Like it is 10 in the morning. It's packed. Like, it's like Star Wars Disneyland opening day bananas, except it's a Tuesday at 10 a.m. And you go in there, and he has to get you through several gateways. He has to get you in, get you the tickets, and this family is straggling along because they have the stroller and they have the grandpa and they have the thing. And we get to a point, and they had to go up the elevator, and we all took the stairs up, and they don't rendezvous or reconnoiter or rejoin the group. And so the guide, this French guy, he's like, oh my God, this is such a pain. He goes, okay, let's give them a minute to catch up. And there's people all over the place. We're in this little group that's down to like 12 people from 22 lost souls, and they're taking the elevator, and he goes, yeah, let's give them a minute to catch up. And he waits, I would say 4 seconds. He goes, okay, let's go. And Asher and I, my son, were like, yeah. So if this is America, the current system we were under, it would be like, we'd have to wait 15 minutes. We would have to call security to find them. We have to, because they paid $75 a person. And he's like, let's go, shed them. And we moved on. It was an incredible visit. I'm here with Grant Wins. Grant is a entrepreneur, is currently got an AI platform that's really interesting. And before we get into that and talk about your AI platform, I'm just going to give you observation from running the business that I'm running. Is it used to be, because AI is really, it's either something or nothing, okay, or a great bust, or it's going to change the way they. But there's $1 trillion going into it, and $1 trillion going out, and what is going to be left over is going to be the question, can you make any money with it? But you know what this reminds me of? Chewing gum. No, not really. And what it reminds me of course, is 1999 and the internet.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so what happened then is entrepreneurs came in 1999, and the tools of the internet allowed people, and this feels to start businesses, move more quickly, and move faster than the big dumb farm animals called large companies, right? And so you could outmaneuver, outposition, and big companies didn't know anything about it. They didn't know where it came from, and they had to hire all these young people who understood literally HTML, and they had to build a website and everything like that because they were completely clueless and they were stuck in typewriters or Microsoft Word or whatever. And the internet, HTML, JavaScript, and the things you could do, and then that let things like PayPal just pop out of nowhere, which was, you can send money by email. It's like crazy. What's different today is big companies are not dumb. And so that's what I want to talk to you about. Big companies, in my experience and seeing the companies that I do, raising capital, my mid-market portfolio companies, big companies are wiping the walls with small and medium-sized companies. And I'll give you an example. Here in Southern California, a small to medium-sized company cannot hire anybody. Well, first of all, unemployment is -5%. But big companies are good at hiring. Like they use the pre-AI. They have HR departments that scan everywhere. They take a long cycle. They treat it like a sales pipeline. They have infrastructure on it. They're big enough that they can offer all these comps and perks. They have a center of gravity. They have incentive programs, and they have so it used to be you could run an ad and say, hey, I'm looking for a marketing director, or I'm looking for a copywriter, or I'm looking for a videographer, and boom, and you could have the pick of the lot. Southern California, and you could pay $70,000 and you could get the more pipeline of candidates and better quality candidates just by moving the money button. Okay, we'll go to 70. Today you run that ad, I don't mean, but like ex-librarians, with dog walking ability are applying for videographer, MBA required for, 10 years of video experience, and literally dog walkers are applying for it. And that's it. It's tumbleweeds going through. Big companies are not dumb. They are not slow. They are not confused about competition. They're just big and good. So now you have this AI walking in, and it's almost like the big companies are going to get better. So you're also in the lower middle market where I am. Do you have a perspective on the competitive nature of big companies today and how, small and medium-sized companies can even compete? And then, let's just talk about the segment of AI that, where is a generative AI? How fast is it moving? Got robots can do front flips. Everybody wants a different signal on how fast, how good this is going to get, why it matters, and then sort of where the money is.
Yeah, well, first off,
okay, thanks. You. So that was really excellent. All right, guys, we're going to go to a commercial break after getting that excellent perspective from Graham. I mean, I think that enriched my understanding of how it all works. So thank you.
Yeah. Well, seriously, thank you for having me on the show. Really excited to be here with you. Look, I'm in ground zero of AI. So we're in San Francisco, and over the past 3 years, 200 billion has come in just into the AI sector through venture capital and other investment into the segment. And a third of that is into my neighborhood in San Francisco. So I'm boots on ground, across from our office is OpenAI's office and others as well. And so a lot of the companies you're talking about, like the big players, right? Whether it's Google or Facebook, when it comes down to competing with them, we'll dive all into this. But I've been to these offices, and it may not be what it seems to appear, which is that you'd assume that a Google or a Facebook is moving super fast on AI in every single vertical. And this is both simultaneously true and false, where it is true on the foundational model, right? This is where every big player is going into. And this is where the monsters in terms of capital are all coming into, right? OpenAI right now just raised, I think, another 40 million from SoftBank, announced
billion.
Yeah, 40 billion
yeah.
from SoftBank at a $260 billion valuation. These are like monstrous private rounds. And the original thesis was that, we'll create a God model with a foundational model, and this will sort of solve every problem across every vertical, and it'd be highly defendable.
Yeah.
Obviously, like DeepSeek and the news that came out of China, and you've been watching that, and that way of building a model has really thrown a wrench into how do you defend those big models. And so the ability for these models to stay defendable and generate revenue over the long haul is sort of in question, right? It's in threat. And so where does the value then go? If these models get commoditized down to zero, then it's going to move to the next layer up.
So before we can get into value, I think the question is like, first of all, how fast is it really moving? It's been moving, I think you find these technologies have been moving for 5 years, and then they reach one little tipping point improvement that makes them where they have a front end on it, and then it feels like it came out of nowhere. So what's your perspective on how fast this really came about? And then the second is like, how fast is it moving going forward?
Well, it is moving exceptionally fast right now. And it didn't start that way, right? Machine learning has actually been around for a long time, now labeled AI. And it really started in like 2017 with a transformer model that helped these large data sets get put into AI models, right? And so the pace in which things are moving in San Francisco right now blows just about anyone away. And so it used to be, you'd hear about a model, you heard about, DALL-E, right? The first image generation model. And that was exciting for 6 to 8 months. And then the next one came out. This progression is now getting compressed into every single month. There's a new model. OpenAI launches ChatGPT 4 and then DeepSeek and then the next one. And so on the foundational layer and the application layer too, and hardware layer, all of it is moving at the speed of light right now. And I think just as human beings, where the nature of compounding is really difficult to understand, and in technology, we're also compounding right now too.
So what are people thinking is like the most interesting application from the broad model? So you go, hey, okay, I get it. I can do a legal document that I would have had to hire a lawyer for. We do a lot of the time. I have a lease. Normally I spend 2 or 3 hours reading it. I'm like, hey, what looks stinky in here, right? Highlights 3 things. Last night I just sent a long email, to an employee. I shoved it in here and like, hey, what could come under compliance review? And it's like flagged a couple things. I changed them. So all that stuff is amazing, saves money, saves time. What in the generative model, people are going, holy crap, that is orders of magnitude application improvement or capability in the real world from the general model?
From a general model, it's really good at doing general things really well.
But what's one thing what's one general thing that is just transformative, from ground zero that
So, one thing that's like pretty interesting that foundational models can do, right, is a lot of here's a specific example.
Yeah.
Like, what does it take for an EA to do their job, right? There's a lot of like reviewing emails, a lot of scheduling. These type of things, general models can do pretty well, but in a fragmented way, right? You give it an email and you ask it to proofread it, they're going to do that really, really well. You ask it, hey, find times that overlap in our calendars, it's going to be able to do that. Where these foundational models tend to not excel is in when a model has to kind of think through deeply what it's up to. And that's where reasoning models came from. And so reasoning is like where this is going, which is a singular foundational model can make many calls to really reason through a task. Really good for math, right? Math and coding, this is changing the game very rapidly. So Cursor is a company in San Francisco. They've got to, I think, 100 million ARR in 20 months with a 20-person team. And this is coding. Like, this is replacing software engineers. It's replacing math. Where those reasoning tasks actually don't do so well for foundational models is in just straight up conversation. And so you'll see some advancements coming soon. But where models fall apart is when a task needs to be carried out across a few different surface areas. And so what you'll start hearing and have already heard of is like what AI agents are or what agentic AI is.
Yeah.
And so this idea of agentic AI really solves some of those key shortcomings of foundational models, where they'll be able to do the task of an email rewrite or draft an agreement. But now if you wanted to do all of that together, that's agentic AI, and it's really taking task 1, task 2, task 3.
So it's like, look at these emails, consider the issues that are unaddressed between us, write an agreement that gets go out and price that agreement, like what the terms of that agreement should be and what's a good range of dollars per hour for the agreement, and then reach out to the various parties and say, hey, this is alpha draft. Please contribute your edits and redline to it, consolidate those red lines, and propose back to me where we should go given people's asks and what should be our best alternative to a negotiated agreement.
Yeah, and like that whole workflow, that's like agentic AI, right?
Yeah.
And where it is interesting is like corporate America is adopting AI very quickly right now too. So they're adopting just the technology category across every vertical, whether it's HR or legal or just across the organization right now. And so what's interesting is that process can run in a foundational model based on general context is going to be able to put up a really good draft. But you don't want to just then hit send on that and just trust a foundational model to then deliver that all the way to the end. And this creates a really exciting opportunity, because what ends up happening is that the general data from the internet is getting you sort of in the middle line, right? It's getting you good. It's getting you 80% of the way there. But to really trust it, you then want a particular data set that is more specific for legal context, for example, so that you can trust it all the way through. And that's giving birth to these new application layer
and
AI
that's
tools.
where the value is being built.
And that's where all that's where all the value is. That's where brands are being built. That's where it is durable, profitable. That's where you can actually build a business.
And give me some example of the applications. Let's talk about your application for a few minutes.
Yeah, so we have a company called Una. And so to talk about the application that we're building right now is we're putting mental health behind the push of a button on phones everywhere. And so one of our customers is Amazon. So if you're, a driver in blue delivering packages, traditionally, if you wanted to go see someone for your mental health, you might use an EAP and book an appointment with the therapist. It takes maybe weeks to get someone and it's high cost. Now they can just pull out their phone, push a button and get the mental health support they need. And so
then what is mental health support that the software can develop, right? So the concern is if you were around very early with this stuff, you would say, Eliza or whatever, you would say, hey, how are you? And it would say, how are you? Right?
Yeah.
You'd say, I'm fine. That's good. What's on your mind? Well, my girlfriend is really, getting hard to reach lately, and she canceled date night 3 times in a row. That's fantastic. Well, no, I don't think it's that fantastic. Is this something you want to work on? And for years, the interpersonal models were anything but personal, right? They just try to push you into a discussion area and give you uplifting, generalized comments, but it was clear the software didn't really understand what you were into. So now if you go into the general model and you run that same thing, hey, my girl, I'm worried, what's happening between me and my girlfriend. By the way, this is hypothetical. I'm asking for a friend. Okay. I'm asking for a friend.
Of course.
Yeah. He wanted to know, and he's really interested in what you do in this. So just asking for a friend. Now, if you go to the general model and you say, hey, my girlfriend and I are drifting apart. She canceled a couple of date nights. She's hard to reach on the weekends. And, we just, really get together for stuff that she has to do anyway, like shopping or working out. And it seems like we're drifting apart. So what does the general model do with that?
So a general model is basically designed to have like a really conversation that you thumbs up its messages to.
Yeah.
So it will have the conversation with you.
So a fist bump. It's going to try and get to a fist bump.
Yeah, it'll get you to a fist bump. It'll definitely keep you talking, right? That's like its goal. But what it won't do is actually deliver on some of the clinical modalities that we have as humanity, like cognitive behavioral therapy or dialect behavioral therapy, that are clinically shown to actually help with a situation like that. A general model has a much harder time delivering on that.
So if we push on that a little bit more and go, so I have some, everybody has sort of, sociology, psychology 101, from their first year, and you go, hey, you're giving me like Wall Street Journal relationship advice. Can you use one of the, more credentialed clinical models to evaluate this relationship and drive it into, drive me towards some problem solving to get into a better shape. So what does the general model do with that direction?
So a general model, it might be, 4 messages that make you feel good, and then basically just keeps giving you fist bumps. So it won't, even if you ask it to drive like, hey, treat this like a therapist, it might draw from a few things from cognitive behavioral therapy, but there's no guardrails on it. It's going to quickly veer off into some other category. And so the net result or the implication is that people go there, they say, hey, be my psychologist, and they're not getting high quality care, number one. And number two, it could have what is called an agentic, or like basically an impact that feels positive, but it's actually not. And this is what like our head of clinical, our PhD, we talk about our team here in a moment, but this is something that she's really focused on. So
this reminds me of when Asher was 4, I would put him on like backwards skating for hockey, because he plays hockey on YouTube. And then I'd go off and do something. And then there's something I was doing, turned into a phone call went around. I'm like, oh my God, I haven't seen Asher in 40 minutes. I just left him watching YouTube. It's okay because he's watching, how to improve your backwards skating, right? I come back and it's like the NHL's bloodiest moments. Because it's running the algorithm on what it thinks I would want to see. on YouTube. So it's running algorithm. The algorithm spins. It goes off into cul-de-sacs, and you don't know you're in a cul-de-sac. And then at the end of the day, you're either haven't solved anything. I'm just guessing. You're into complex clinical modalities that you're not capable of really understanding the tool.
Yeah.
And how to use it, or it's got you sort of a Band-Aid on an untreated wound.
Yeah.
Right.
That's actually a really good point. So just for clarity's sake, like our company is really focused on building technology and proprietary AI technology that can deliver clinical level care. And oftentimes when you get into the depths of like what DBT and some of these therapies can do, that's a really good point where it's like you can rip off a Band-Aid and then not be in an environment where in a general model that's able to then handle that. And you can't just slap that Band-Aid back on. Now there's real trauma that's coming up that needs a safer place to interact.
Yeah. So for people, just to clear, so my mom's a clinical psychologist. She teaches a modality called EMDR, which is a light movement, eye movement therapy, and they now have lights where you follow the lights with your eyes, and just that movement under the right therapeutic environment, it releases trauma. And so the what happened there with that therapy is because it used the movement they used to do with their fingers, the trained therapist. It's to move your and so you had to be highly trained in order to get somebody into that trauma release condition. It's not hypnosis, it's just some physical movement puts your mind in ability to access trauma that you couldn't get access to before. All right. Then they built it into an automated thing where the lights move on a programmatic way. You follow and then it releases the trauma. But because the light bar is programmed, anybody can release the trauma. But unless you're a trained cognitive psychologist, therapist in trauma, in treating trauma, you can do more harm than good by releasing it. Because when it's released, it has to be dealt with. It can't just hang out there undealt with. And so this is even a more volatile light bar because it can get you into trauma release without the ability to recognize and in a human way deal with the opening of the wound, the trauma wound. So how then does your proprietary programming recognize that? Is it rich enough then to how much does it assist, and when does it throw up hands and say we need a human professional?
Yeah. So I'll kind of walk you through it, and I should probably tell you like who's behind this too.
Yeah.
So it's myself, and I have two co-founders who are in the field. And so Tara Delberto is our head of psychology, who's really focused on this right now. She's a PhD in clinical psychology, and she spent a decade at Cornell. And she was really researching some of the latest modalities, and she's been in the space for a long time. And so she's paired with our AI engineers, and what we're really focused on is how do we not only perceive what needs to be perceived, because it's not just the words that someone's saying, it's also the tone of voice, right? And so we capture their voice and vocal inflections to understand like what their current emotional status is, for example. And so the perception is one, and then actually delivering, like, how do you deliver quality care? This is in the assessment of, okay, how are they feeling? What are they saying? What have been some of the traumas that they've talked about before, and where do they want to go? And so part of our agentic AI system is reasoning, actually developing a therapeutic plan for them, and then switching to the right modality at the right time. And so one of the things that we have some incredible results on is DBT, or dialect behavioral therapy, which has been shown to address a wide range of mental health symptoms. And there's a whole lot under the surface in DBT. And so what our system can do is not only sort of accurately figure out, hey, there's trauma here, but also like what would be the right response to really mimic what a clinical psychologist will do in an accurate way. And we switch for anyone who's like having a conversation in Una, we're constantly switching the modality type across a sequence of different agents that is handled by a very, very complex controller that we've created internally.
So when does the system throw up its hands and say, hey, this is beyond the scope of the automation?
A couple places, and I'll give you like the number one.
Yeah.
So suicidal ideation, right? Like that is not a place for someone to be on a chatbot. And when someone is on our platform and experiencing that, we don't just want to stop the conversation. They're in a really sensitive place. And so what we do is we quickly and slow down the conversation and then bring the right resources into the app to get them the care level that they need.
This kind of reminds me of every once in a while, you'll have an interview, and the interviewer will have the questions and everything, and they'll get you around. They've written the questions ahead of time. And then, they'll ask you something, they got you going and they got you in the moment, and then they'll be like, what was your relationship like with your parents, and, and then, your dad passed away, and, what do you wish that you could bring forward, from your dad and your relationship with your son, right? But to them, it's just questions. You're like, wow, my son, and they're like, turn sideways and just got their Slurpee, and they're like, you're like pouring your heart out, and they're like, yeah, okay, and so they can evoke the interviewer, can evoke this like empathy, and draw you out and get in that moment, and then they do something, and you realize they're just filming a shoot, and slurping on the Slurpee. Which is really a horrible moment. And so I think that will be, the highest, concern is you really then are letting this stuff pour out. And then you realize it's just a machine.
Yeah. And it's appropriate handling of that, right? So that is where a foundational model really falls apart. And that's what creates a really interesting opportunity. How do we actually bring clinical quality care to humanity behind the push of a button? And it's interesting, some of the experiments that we've run as a company, and we run a lot of experiments, is what type of relationship with Una do people want? And so we've explored lots of different variants of this, right? And we don't try to project that Una is a person. We don't try to create that relationship. We're very clear, hey, this is AI that you are talking to. It is a machine.
I kind of have this vision of a commercial for you guys, like, a robot on the roof. Like talking to the AI, and the AI that doesn't convince it to, to not jump. And the robot jump. There's a big pile of robots, at the bottom when you guys are testing. You're like, okay, no, we don't do. There's because the giant, pile of robot limbs. There's things we don't, we don't touch, and there are things that this stuff is really good at.
Yeah, there are things it's really good at, and like human safety is our number one priority, right?
Yeah.
And so how do we operate in an ethical way as a company in this space is very important to us, including trust and safety. So like when people are talking to those conversations are incredibly private.
That's the big thing. Like, when I go to Chat GPT, it's always a big concern. I mean, I'm sort of logged into it all the time. Yeah. And then I'm like, hey, what would be good for date night? Right. And then, okay, well, she didn't like that. Right. What else do you have? Well, I don't, basically she doesn't like anything. What do you get for somebody who's mean to you all the time, doesn't like anything, and is, and is rude to you and never loved you in the first place. Right. And all this is in there. Yeah. And I just have my Chat GPT open all the time, and I realize like there's just, that's our relationship, but the exposure, like balance sheet. Hey, our balance sheet is at 13 million. I'm worried about breaking our debt service coverage ratio covenants. How do I improve our balance sheet, in the next 30 days with cash-like equivalents, right? And that is an exposure like, hey, I'm worried from a compliance standpoint. I'm quote unquote worried about my balance sheet. And it's just like in the Chat GPT, but we do disclose a lot to it. And I worry about that, but if you're going even like 4 levels deeper, really exposing some things, especially if it's related to relationship, body dysmorphic issues, everybody has something. Yeah. That's what I learned from the various groups I'm in. Yeah. Like, everybody has something.
And you never, it's never obvious. That's the other thing too.
Yeah. And we're good at masking as humans. That's our, lying is really the primordial skill set because it allows us to survive. And sometimes in our culture, it allows us to take the lie too far. And so if the lie is exposed, the cognitive dissonance internally from having the lie exposed is too great for people to handle, you know, and then they get into real problems. So how does trust and safety work?
Well, for us, it is like a two-part equation of really focusing on like what is the actual impact we're making to the human beings, the lives that we're touching. And we can measure that with, so like our head of clinical is measuring that right now. So we monitor things like stress and mood to make sure that we're actually making good impact. Like that's number one. And then number two, on the safety and security side, we are religious about making sure that we have everything encrypted. It's SOC 2 compliant, HIPAA compliancy. Like that is very important to us. And we're the emerging leader in this category. And this is a newer category, right? And so like HIPAA compliancy, for example, like isn't a requirement for the space. However, we're operating in that way already because we think that the winner of this space will need to be the number one in trust and safety. And so when people are having conversations with Una, human beings can't see that. And that's really important. And so you want to know that you're in
have this
a private
picture of
place.
Like at the end of the day, Grant just unplugging a hard drive, like throwing in his briefcase, throwing the back of the Tesla.
It's all encrypted. Well, humans can't even see it. So it's like, it's a pretty robust system that we built. Yeah.
And so more on that, the safety mechanism. I think that is really where a lot of the concern is when you're talking to the machine.
Yeah.
So for me, because, you know, Pitch Anything's, you know, been read by well over 1 million people, you know, a couple million people.
Yeah.
You know, more than 1 million sales. I would love to get an online, you know, you hear the ad by Ben Affleck and Matt Damon or whatever, and whatever the service, you know, that those, anyway, what's one of the more popular services that are mental health related, where they hook you up with a live therapist?
Yeah. So like BetterHelp would be a good example of one of those. Yeah.
So, you know, there's nobody, you know, I lost an account, you know, my publisher delayed, you know, the publication. I missed the gym 3rd day in a row. You know, my son didn't listen to me and didn't, you know, take his hockey gear out of the car, smelled at my car overnight. Country music song, right?
Yeah.
My dog got lame, lost my money in a poker game. Windstorm came just the other day, blew the house that I lived in away. I would love to like call, you know, Better Health, question, you know, who's on the other side. But the bigger thing is my risk of disclosure, saying like, hey, you know, to my audience, you know, 99.99% of the earth doesn't care, but my audience would be really interested to know what's behind the mask, right? And I'm interested to keep it behind the mask.
Right.
And so I don't feel comfortable calling those services because that disclosure would be, whether it's financial or personal, would be devastating to me personally.
This is such a good point. And this is like why celebrities are turning towards Una over a BetterHelp, because it is private. And actually what we...
Smartlist is the podcast I was thinking of, where they I think they promote is that the one that they promote on Smartlist?
Yeah, they're promoting on like a lot of podcasts right now. I mean, in this space too, like the reason why Una is transformational for this space is that it traditionally takes that hour-long conversation with a human being, right? That is high cost, and it takes like long time to find the right therapist, to engage with the right therapist. And then, you know, each week or 2 weeks, you're scheduling this appointment. We solve the two problems of cost and access, making it low cost and instantly available on your phone. This is revolutionary for both like humanity at large and an individual who's in a place that just like, whether they're overthinking about something, want to talk, or in crisis.
Well, we had a boy on Asher's hockey team whose dad passed away. And so that really put the family in the support system. And we, you know, it's not good. Like you have the insurance company, you have the sheriff's department, you have the state, but you have a working family, and those resources are very, very high friction to, you know, step into. When you have these immediate high inflection point life changes, and you don't get to sort of roll into finding a therapist. And Southern California, you're talking $250 to $400 an hour.
Yeah. Oh, easy.
And then and if that doesn't fit for you, sort of cash pay, then you got to roll into the system, get enrolled in the system, have them find something back, and you're sort of slave to whenever the system is providing you something, to the hours and accessibility that they provide. And then if you're working, those don't overlap. It's just really hard to get that care.
It's super hard. And, 55.5 million Americans have go through that process every year. And the implications of UNA is that more people can access the care they need. And so that number should be much, much higher. And it's already surging. And so that's the space that we're up to disrupting.
And so at the risk of people accusing me of having a juice commercial for UNA, what is hard about doing these specific application models, in the AI? So, for example, one of I think the promises or the threats is, hey, generative smart AI, build me a UNA replica, right? And then it looks as much as it can, and it goes, here you go, here's Unya, right? And so how hard, so, I see you laughing at it, that's good. You're not like, oh shit, let's sell before that happens. So how hard is it to build these application models, and how at risk is it from going, hey, ChatGPT 9.6, build me an Uber. Right. I want to launch this afternoon.
Yeah. Well, the easy answer is incredibly difficult to actually solve these problems. And what makes it so difficult is that these are very complex modalities. Fortunately, they are, they're structured, so we're able to deliver them with AI quite succinctly. But that's only the beginning of the problem. The real problem is in identification of what someone's going through, and then how you take them through an experience that's actually helpful. And this is something that is behind the scenes. It is both art and a science, and it comes from testing, and it comes from being first in the marketplace, and it comes from the experiments and things that we've learned.
What's the blend of technical expertise you need, engineering expertise you need, software expertise you need, and domain expertise that you need to build an application layer, AI company?
Yeah, well, you need best in class in every category that you just said, plus.
And so for how many, so how many people do you guys have?
So we are 10 right now, full time.
Yeah. And is it 9 engineers, 1 you, or 9 you, 1 engineer?
It's a mixture between AI engineers and clinical. And so a little bit of product in there as well. So the UI UX of the product, and how do you get people to enjoy this experience, right? And create something they like. A big part of this is pairing AI engineers with clinical psychologists and working through how to create an agentic system that impacts people, that is safe, everything we've been discussing. And this is a really interesting space to build in, because just as much as it is about clinical care, it's also about the style in which you do it. And so let's assume that right now we only have 7% of the therapists we need, right? So there's a supply demand shortage in humanity today. So it's not about replacing therapists, but what makes a great therapist a great therapist? Is it just that they run cognitive behavioral therapy to the letter? It is that, but it's also their style. It's how well they can connect with you. This is why people search for a new therapist. And how we do that is part of the proprietary sauce that's behind the scenes in our company, something that we've been working really hard on to create an experience that's enjoyable for the interpersonal relationship that you can build on UNA as well. And so all on these technical surface areas.
This is where I think the generative AI, I remember, I think about all the experiences I have using it, and it's so skippy and happy. Oh, great, let's get into it now. So you got a problem with your girlfriend?
Yeah.
Right? This is good. You came to the right place, right? Here's the 3 ways. This is typically
do this and this and this.
And it doesn't build the trust. It doesn't have guidance. It just tries to get to the answer as quickly as possible. And I think it's programmed that way to stop spending cycles.
Yeah. Less tokens, less in, less out, save cost. Where we take quite a different approach. One of the things that we learned really early on was if you just have a foundational model, its goal is to sort of solve the problem as fast as possible, but people aren't ready for that. So like a human being's not ready to like go from, hey, I'm talking about an issue with my significant other straight to the solution. There's actually this nuance in between. And so part of where this whole field is going and where we're pushing and leading as a company is like how to actually build that relationship and run the therapeutic process at the right pace.
How does the money work in these application, for you guys? Is it still, a 5-year build? Who's the investor? What is the path to revenue stability, and certainly look at an exit model and who buys these things, and what is the typical, sort of SaaS software company path from inception to exit? How does it overlay on these AI builds? How similar or different is it?
Yeah, well, the amount of capital needed for actually building the product, research and development has gone down. The cost of building models is very expensive, right? So if a company has good data, good proprietary data, and can build, the capital required is less than it used to be, right? Because building a SaaS company in the past was very hard. Now, leveraging the best tools, we're able to be much more efficient. So just across the entire industry right now in San Francisco, what we're seeing is a trend of less capital needed to get to market with a really great product and less people needed. So traditionally, you think of like a company that's entering a new market, you got to have 50 people, you got to have huge venture backing, and that's how you go in. Today, that's really flipping on its head. A lot of the recent outcomes, like Cursor that I was saying, they're getting to 100 million in ARR with 20 people. So that is fundamentally different. And so the investor that is really interested in this category that we like to work with is the investor that is excited about these individual verticals, right? So going into how do you really revolutionize therapy, and how do you go revolutionize what legal looks like? And so they typically have a little bit of domain expertise potentially, or maybe they know someone that's connected into the industry or like a big customer. Those are the type of investors that we really like working with, or someone who's just generally passionate about the space. On the what revenue looks like, I can speak to our company a little bit. And I'll speak to the greater marketplace somewhat. So what we're seeing right now in San Francisco is you have this emergent of this AI application layer, usually with a focus like Una's, right? It's about augmenting one person, so like a therapist or like a GC on the legal side as another good example. And you're seeing right now in corporate America a real desire to like intake these new products and get them running. And so when you talk about path to revenue, like obviously there's the path of consumer, right? B2C. There's obviously the path of B2B. Where we like to play is in what it looks like to work in the HR space, right? How do companies bring care to their entire teams? They usually select a benefit, and they bring that benefit at a fairly affordable cost to their entire team.
Right.
So like for us, that's a really exciting pathway to revenue. And that's what we've been winning with. And so today we work with companies like Amazon, and we work with TPAs and brokers. And it's more so for us, it's about scaling into that pathway. And we're excited about the logos. We're really excited about the impact to the people we're making who are behind those logos. And when you talk about defendability, one thing that is just generally new for this space is that there is both customer entrenchment on the B2B side, and so that's something that we're really focused on and winning at. The other side is being ahead of the market from a time standpoint. So you'll hear in San Francisco right now, the competitive moat is being 8 to 12 months ahead of the market at all times. And so it's just an internal discipline that these companies have to like, hey, let's be on the cutting edge. Let's be on the frontier of both the models we're working with, the technology we're working with, and the solution we're providing. And let's always stay pushing on the gas right there. And that's a really exciting space to be in. And outside of this place in San Francisco, that becomes a little bit more difficult because San Francisco has this really interesting 2 to 3 month sort of knowledge gap with the rest of the world on AI, which has been super interesting to witness as an entrepreneur.
And so who, once this company is revenue stable, then income stable, and then income increasing, and it's super juicy, how do the investors get out? in your mind from a game of money standpoint?
Yeah.
So, really fun to be in a company. So, one of the things in a venture fund, although you can get trapped in a 7-year cycle, that their business model requires that, it's functionally built in that they have to end a fund, wrap everything up in the fund, close the fund, distribute the fund in order to demonstrate track record to raise another fund. So exit strategy is inherently built in to their ability to run the venture capital firm's business. In these companies, without that venture capital driver, how do you think about, okay, my money's worth a lot because the company, I put it in, I got share certificates. Now those share certificates have revenue and income attached to them, so they're worth a lot more. I bought the share for $1. It's now worth $5 because it's got revenue and income and, customers and stability and growth. How do people in these kind of companies think about when they can get out?
I'll talk about how we think about it. And how maybe the greater marketplace thinks about it a little bit. But there's basically 2 ways to make money as an investor, right? You have a liquidation event, or you have like a distribution. And so when we think about the space that we're building in, a lot of these companies, like we referenced, right? BetterHelp or Teladoc is a publicly traded company in our space. These companies have to build what we're building, they would have to put their business model at complete risk.
Sure.
Right. And so they're not going to destroy their business model to build this. And so they're going to be kind of in a position where they're going to be looking to acquire these companies, right? To augment their services later. So that's like a pretty interesting
I agree. It's super hard to go, okay, we're going to put $15 million into a business that competes with the business we have directly.
I've talked to the companies, we know them. They're just not going to do it.
Yeah.
It's basically like, let's blow up our publicly traded company to chase a new opportunity. They're just not doing it. But what's ironic is the new opportunity might be a lot larger. It's still, though, if you're in that seat, it's very, very hard choice to make. And the risk level within these companies is not, like, their risk appetite just isn't quite there.
Well, like Rev is a good mini version of this. So Rev is transcription. So they started with human transcription. They really turned it very efficient. So it's like 25 cents a minute. There's no other way to get transcriptions. You give it to them. Then came voice recognition, and they did that for 10 cents a minute. It was less accurate. Then there was the AI came on, and they had hey, it's a free model. It's not that good, but it's free.
Yeah.
Right. But we still have the human transcription, for deadly accuracy. And now they're just pay your $9 a month, fee, and then just use the AI willy nilly. And the AI is incredible. So their whole model has been eroded by just the AI, so you could see them step down sequentially trying to protect their 25-cent model. And because the day the AI came out, they didn't just go, hey, we're changing our whole business model. They essentially got wiped out from all that 25-cent per minute revenue because they didn't move fast enough.
Yeah.
They just, because they couldn't on day one go, hey, we're going into a free model.
Yeah.
When our investors are not going to allow us just to throw a hand grenade into our revenue stream.
Yeah, I mean, it's a classic story we've seen in the past, and I think we're going to see a lot more of in this new AI wave. And that's a really exciting place because there's going to be 2 types of companies, right? There's going to be the type of companies that ignore it and just lose their business. There's going to be the companies that...
Please don't talk about us like that. You can just say, I see that you're trying hard, and let me know if you need any help. Okay,
all right. There's the companies that...
Yeah.
But and then there's another side of it, which are the companies that are really paying attention to AI right now. They're looking to bolt it into their business. They're looking to make acquisitions in the space. And from building a company perspective, that creates... a moment in time where it may make sense to partner with someone and have an acquisition event, right? Join a larger team and create liquidity for investors. And there's like a third possibility here too, which is that this space is transforming so quickly that by being a leader in this space and expanding our services into HR tech and where we're going, there's a real opportunity to sort of reinvent the entire category of employee assistance programs using digital first technology.
Yeah.
And that long term is a really exciting proposition because the total addressable market there is more than enough to put on sizable revenue and potentially be a really good fit for an IPO. And I'll give you an example of what this looks like just recently. So Hinge Health does AI physical therapy. So you pull out your camera, helps you do physical therapy. This replaces the need for appointment with a human.
Yeah.
And by going through HR, they put on about 300 million ARR. They just filed an S1 to go public. So we'll see how their IPO goes.
And how long have they been around?
So they've been around since 2016. So they're a few years. They're a few years ahead of us in terms of
When you say
like
a few,
our
you mean
timeline.
10. But yes, okay.
yeah, they've been around. Yeah.
I have to put my San Francisco decoder.
No,
ring
please.
on.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like when we need a few bucks to run our model. I'm 34 billion. A few.
Yeah, a few bucks.
A few bucks. How do people find out from you more about your specific application layer, Una?
Best way is to go experience it. So Una is spelled YUNA.
Yeah.
.io is our website. So Una.io. It is, our beta is available to the public, so they can download it there. The commercial version is available to HR directors and benefit providers where they can use it. We put out research on our website as well.
Nate was telling me the name is from you, not crazy, and then you just guys were like made it short. Was that,
I wish that'd be
okay.
that'd be a better story.
Is that the back? Is that the backstory?
I mean, I can get into the
that's too
backstory
long
if you'd like.
And Crazy Eddie has that trademark on that. So what about just Una? So I like
yeah, just short. Yeah, it's shorthand for unification, right? Like unify.
Nice.
Cognitive behavioral therapy is about your thoughts, your emotions, your behaviors, and like how can you unify those? And it's so cool, by the way, that your mom you grew up with a clinical psychologist, and so was that part of what makes you tick? What makes you great?
It is, because you know a lot about your problems. A lot earlier than a regular kid would, right? So you got a very good breakdown of your, psychological weaknesses, so awareness is from maybe the first step to the journey of improvement. My dad was a sociologist, so a lot of that was like awareness of these modalities existed. You didn't just have like problems. High emotional release generally leads to chaos and trouble. And then there's some like programming to take your problems through, to release tension, diffuse the high emotion, be able to, I read a lot of these books, good example. I read a lot of these books on, espionage and things like that. They help me go to sleep at night. But when you get into according to the books, which are usually really well researched, you get into a high tense situation in which you have a physical threat, and if you're not able to control your nervous system, your eyesight pipelines, in from the sides, you lose your peripheral vision. Wow. You lose your fine motor skills. You lose communication. Things start to fall apart that are the functioning skills you need for that situation, unless you can keep your nervous system under control. And that's where that box breathing came from.
Yeah.
And so it's the same thing, sort of growing up, you get into like, oh my God, I didn't study for the midterm, as a 12-year-old. There's no way to catch up on 6 weeks of work that I didn't do. And you're freaking out, and I'm going to get a bad grade and everything like that. And so, there's psychological, calming tools. There's, understanding tools. There's understanding of consequences and breaking it down and getting your nervous system down and going, okay, the world is not ending. And now you can get some of your skill, operating skills back, and you can then plow through the problem. So that's a lot of what I learned from having somebody with psychological modalities in place. It just, it's not just high emotion, explosion, chaos, further problems.
Yeah.
Right. That leads to tattoos and jail.
Yeah.
as you get older, not as an 8-year-old.
What a blessing to have parents that like could teach that.
Yeah.
And you know, these modalities they're not new to humanity, right? They've evolved over time. Like cognitive therapy and behavior therapy became cognitive behavioral therapy, and family systems became internal family systems. These things have evolved over time. So they've been available to humanity. And the question is like, what's prevented everyone to receive the information that like you received when you were growing up?
There's no doubt that there's behavioral modalities for all these situations. Here, example I give you. We got to start wrapping up but we could talk about this all day. Very early on, I was, you know, in my journey through life when I was in college, I broke up with a girlfriend. It was incredibly, you know, painful, and it was like, you know, I can't remember the whole situation. There's no point getting into it. But I read a book because, first of all, for my parents, I knew there were books.
Yeah.
You know, on this, and I read a book, and what these researchers have found, there's basically 7 ways that relationships come to an end. And for example, what can be pretty frequent is somebody has left the relationship in their mind. They're still in it and going through all the motions, but they're emotionally out, right? They just haven't done the final break. So finally they go, hey, look, I'm leaving you. It's not working out. And you are like, we got to work on, like, this is crazy pants. We got to work on this. And they're like, not really. Because they've done, you know, 6-8 weeks or 8 weeks or a year of work to process that. And you're just slamming into a wall going, hey, we got to process this. And like, no, we don't. Right. So that's one modality that happens in breakouts. So the learning that there's 7, I didn't invent some new way to feel pain. Like I'm feeling some pain that one version of pain, one of the 7 versions that everybody else has ever broken up with anybody feels. And that's incredibly comforting. Like there, and then you just got to pick your lane. Oh, I got pain in this lane, and here's the modality for that lane.
Yes.
And that's a lot better than just sitting there, you know, I'm miserable and want to die.
Yes. And that process, typically people, like a human being would walk someone through that process and it changes their lives.
Right.
And the future that we have with Una is that Una can walk people through that.
And it's bad when that human being that has to walk you through that is like you, right? Yourself, because you read a book.
Yeah, it can be really tricky.
Right? So as we wrap up here, that's awesome. So get in touch with Grant if you're interested at Una, and you know, use the product, invest in the company, buy the company, you know, whatever it is. Who knows who's on this list? But because you're there in San Francisco, what's some of the craziest things as we exit stage left? What's some of the craziest things you're hearing about the future of AI? Just the robot from the future of Skynet model.
Yeah. You know, let's take a step back. I think one of the really interesting things that is happening and is true that I think is happening a lot sooner than we expect is like humanoid robots are going to be everywhere.
Really?
Everywhere.
Yeah.
And this is a really compelling future. And so what does an app store look like when you have a humanoid robot at home is a really interesting sort of question to ask. And so I think that like these new application layers are going to exist in humanoid robots for one, and all the applications you want will sort of be ubiquitously available in a totally new format. And so that's like one of the things. I mean, the Boston Robotics with the Born Identity app installed is like the new shotgun. Yeah, I mean, very much so. And when you pair robotics with weaponry, that's like a really scary future. And so a lot of what's happening is like there was a conference. I'll just tell you a quick story. So conference in San Francisco. So one of these groups right now that's sort of on the cutting edge of what's happening in AI is called Cerebral Valley that I'm a part of. And so Peter Layden, who has been the chief editor at Wired for 20 years, is putting on this sequence of talks. So on my right, I've got Adam, who invented and sold Siri. And on my left, I've got the VP of Adobe. And we just got this incredible group. And we're talking about how optimistic or pessimistic people are about AI. Look, a lot of hands go up for optimistic, right? We're creating a really exciting future. And but equally, there's quite a few hands up on the pessimistic part. And so what you're hearing a lot right now in San Francisco is really how do we align this future technology with what the future that we want to create as humanity is. And that's a very sort of cerebral variant of the SF, crew. And then what you're also seeing is just people boots on ground, building faster than ever, and really revolutionizing these broad swaths of industry.
Yeah. All right. Excellent. Grant, thank you for being here. Sunday afternoon kept you away from your life and your family. Let's put a nail in it. Get in touch with Grant, if you care about this subject, and these are very serious subjects. But I love that this exists and that you're working on it. So thank you.
Thanks, man. This was a blast.
Awesome.
Thank you for having me on.